Some of you may be aware, but about 2 months ago, I uploaded a 10-hour video of myself playing every version of Double Dragon ever made, and also broke down what happened to the series in general over on What Happened. Now, I'm not sure which deities listened to me when I said it would be cool if the series got another entry, but less than 2 weeks later, that's exactly what occurred when Arc System Works, Modus Games, and Secret Base Games announced Double Dragon Gaiden: Rise of the Dragons, a new spin on the franchise that's coming to absolutely everything on July 27th. So a big thanks goes out to Modus Games for allowing me to take an extended look at Rise of the Dragons well ahead of that release date. These are just going to be my early impressions of the first hour or two, almost as if this is some type of gameplay preview. Are we at this point now? My channel is big enough that I can do early previews of games? Awesome, let's go! Secret Base lobbied to ArcSys to allow them to take on Double Dragon with the goal to do something fresh with it, as the core gameplay of the franchise had already been reinvented several times over the years by a variety of other developers. Secret Base's take would wind up being so different that it was decided to add the Gaiden or side story moniker, which establishes it as its own continuity. So unlike prior games, which were straightforward, simple beat-em-ups, Rise of the Dragons injects a lot of new and interesting elements into the formula. A good example is when you boot up the game for the first time to see the words Token Shop front and center, which it should be because it's a huge component to extending Gaiden's replayability, key for any brawler. This is because it's all about doing multiple runs to earn tokens, which in turn unlocks rewards, with a good portion of those being supplemental material like music and art, but with the real goodies being unlockable characters. While Gaiden already gives you 4 unique fighters from the get-go, Bimmy, Jammy, Marion, and the new dude on the block Matin, there's a further 9 in the game, who get increasingly more expensive to unlock. I love this feature because it harkens back to Double Dragon for the Zeebo
for life! Zeebo for life!
And Double Dragon 4. As of this writing, I have not yet unlocked a new character. I'm still having fun with the starting squad, but it seems like they're going to have fully fleshed out movesets with their own specific special moves. I'll let you know if that's the case later down the line with my full review. The next thing you're presented with is your choice of team. Since this is called Double Dragon, you can take 2 characters into battle to take on whatever gang you like and in whatever order you like. Once the level kicks off, you can then tag them in and out at any time, even in mid-combo if you have the available meter. Suffice to say, this kicks ass, as it creates a very different dynamic while on offense or defense. If you're taking a few hits, rather than using a Streets of Rage or Final Fight Mega Crush to break yourself out of said combo, you can call in your partner, who can then launch into their own attack while your original character escapes. Having a team at your disposal also naturally makes the moment-to-moment brawling more enjoyable and engaging, as you have 2 movesets to explore combo possibilities with. Once you've gotten a handle on things, then you can start experimenting with what attack sequences can be extended best by calling your partner into the fray, which, while it doesn't have the depth of something like Marvel or Dragon Ball FighterZ, is still leaps and bounds more complicated and interesting than what you see in your typical brawler. Even without that though, the core combat is still pretty satisfying. Every character has a few ways to pop enemies in the air, and multiple ways to juggle them. Hell, some special moves were specifically designed for this very purpose. Also, you're gonna need to figure this shit out, because outside of the first level, Rise of the Dragons is no cakewalk. You're gonna be scrounging for every last bit of health and throwing every single weapon at oncoming hordes of enemies in desperation when your back's against the wall. When you start out, your characters are certainly capable, but they have some very noticeable weaknesses. Everyone, even someone like Marion, moves at a leisurely pace, and there's a good bit of delay after you land from a jump, which is very much an old school Double Dragon thing, but something newer players might not like. Your health is also on the lower side, as you can only take a few good hits before you've been laid out, and using your special moves drains your meter something fierce, way more than say in Double Dragon Neon. When you start the game off, things still feel balanced around these limitations, but if you go into the second level with these same base stats, you are very much going to have a bad time. And that's where the last new element in Rise of the Dragons comes into play, which is roguelite elements. Boo! Ooh, I know, lots of purists like their beat 'em ups to stay pure, but honestly, the way things are handled here feel very unintrusive and complement the brawling gameplay rather than overshadow it. After every main level you clear, each member of your team can choose one of 5 possible upgrades, and there's always at least one really cool thing on offer. Upgrading a special move to level 2, increasing your overall life, a shield which protects you against certain attacks, or an overall buff to your base combo. You can also make yourself much faster and negate that small pause after jumping. This is key because the remaining levels you're going to need to clear next are going to get way longer and way harder. Mini-bosses like a Bobo get added, there's more overall enemies, and completely new sections of the stage open up. If you manage to beat all that, the cycle happens again and things get even harder, so you're going to need every upgrade you can get your hands on to tough it out. Money is what drives all of this. If you perform more flashy knockouts with special moves, it nets you more cash, so you can then afford more upgrades, and even bring yourself back from the dead if your team gets KTFO'd. If you group a bunch of enemies together and use the right special move at the right time, you get KO multipliers, which then gives you even better payouts when you've finally cleared a level. Thankfully, the game saves your progress whenever you've annihilated a gang and beaten its specific end boss, but it doesn't save your progress if you've cleared, say, 2 out of the 3 sections of a main level. You can tweak a lot of these features via this page here, which works a lot like the heat system from Hades, but not only does it allow you to make things harder, you can lessen the difficulty as well. However, if you manage to beat stages with the difficulty cranked up, you get better money and token payouts, letting you afford those unlockable characters way faster. All of these systems work really well in both theory and practice, and while I could easily concentrate on all the punching and kicking, in the back of my mind I was always thinking about what I wanted to do next. Cash out my chips to go towards an unlock, focus on the in-stage combat challenges, or consider starting a fresh run with a different team. Making modern beat-em-ups isn't the easiest thing in the world, in that you have to find new and inventive ways to keep things fresh. And when you're talking about a series like Double Dragon that's been around for 36 years, it absolutely needs something fresh. I feel that the very divisive reception Double Dragon 4 got, despite being worked on by the original developers, is proof of that. Thankfully, I feel this gambit has paid off, and that these modern additions to Rise of the Dragons make the game feel way more addictive and engaging than if they hadn't been there at all. Now, I personally really enjoy games like Hades or Dead Cells, and while this doesn't even come close to reaching those levels of rogueness, it borrows just enough from them that it enhances the tried and true combat. I do have to see if things will still hold up after a few more runs, if my unlocked characters are truly engaging or not, and I beat the final boss whose identity is something the game is still holding close to its vest. But I can very honestly say, as of right now, I'm having the proverbial blast playing Rise of the Dragons, and when I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about playing it. I did want to touch on a few more general topics before I wrap up. While I wasn't completely sold on the more cutesy art style when I saw the first trailer, once I started actually playing the game and noticing all the little details, references, and animation flourishes, I started to love it. Again, I much prefer something like this over, say, reusing the exact same sprites from 30 years ago, as everything here oozes a ton of personality and charm. The cutscenes, though, I feel are a little lacking. The sprite work is great, but there are plenty of scenes that really could have used some added animation and effects. Nothing too elaborate, mind you, just stuff you'd see in motion comics and whatnot. That, coupled with voice acting, which is sadly not present for cutscenes, would have really made these sequences a bit more lively. I have to mention the music though, because Rise of the Dragons is chock full of such absolute big fucking banging hot slappers that for me easily places it in the top sounding entries of the entire franchise, which is high praise considering its company. There's a bunch of reinterpretations of tracks from titles of the past, with stuff from Super Double Dragon being particularly noteworthy. If Modus Games and Arxis decide to offer some form of soundtrack down the line, vinyl, digital, or whatever, you can bet your ass I'm gonna cop that. It's just that good. Now, there are a few other picks I need to nit though, but much to my own relief, they're nothing too major. There's plenty of things you need to be aware of in any given level: explosions, gunfire, falling rocks, etc. And while you can dash by holding down the right bumper, there's no move to avoid anything on the vertical plane, like a roll or quick step, which has led to a few situations where I've taken a hit. Considering all the gameplay advances Gaiden has, leaving something out that's been a staple in most beat-em-ups for decades feels like a bit of an oversight. Moving on, whenever you perform special KOs on more than 3 enemies, notification appears on screen which rewards you with food, but this happens each and every time, and since a lot of the game revolves around getting these KOs, you start to see this pop up quite a bit. Now, it's really quick, maybe 1.5 seconds in total, but I can totally see some people getting annoyed by it after the first level. Personally, I think it's fine, but I really wish there was an option to turn it off or at least to minimize it, making it a much smaller pop-up that appears under your life bar or something. This is something I hope they consider in a future update. The last thing is a very much personal preference of mine, but there are certain moves and situations where I wish you had more iframes. The way the game is now, you can get hit out of a lot of stuff and you can't do much about it. Take for example Jimmy's air grab. You can do a combo, chain into the grab, everything goes perfectly, but once this animation triggers, you can still get hit out of it, and that just sucks. You did nothing wrong, you did everything correct, but you still got punished because a punk halfway across the screen threw a bottle after you had already committed to the special move. If you're just standing there or doing your normal attack string, yeah, I get it, I'll take that hit, no problem, that's on me. But when I've spent valuable resources using a special and then get knocked out of it really easily with no defense against it, well, it's just a bit deflating. Lots of beat-em-ups give you invincible special or super moves. The cast of Final Fight 3 can't get hit out of their supers once they've been activated, for example, so that's something I would have liked to have seen here. Now, disclaimer, there might totally be a buff that does just that, but personally, I haven't come across it just yet. And that's it in terms of negatives, and as you heard, they're all pretty minor. I get how the art style and the roguelite mechanics might turn some people off. I wasn't sure about them at first either, but I've totally been made a believer now. I don't want all beat-em-ups to adopt systems like these because then they won't be unique, but for a franchise as old as this, I really do feel it's done a lot to make Double Dragon new and exciting again. You can expect my more detailed thoughts, including what I felt about the unlockable characters, bosses, and endgame, in my full review, which will be coming at the end of July, but for now, I'm happy to say that Double Dragon Gaiden has got me hyped for the future of the franchise. Thanks again to Modus Games for allowing me to play it early, and until then, I'll see you next time, Dragon Warriors!
To make the